Hello, everybody. I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports, and I'm joined by my podcast partner, Tom Laidlaw, who played in the NHL for the New York Rangers and the Los Angeles Kings. And we're joined by our special guest, Dave Fisher, who is the spokesman for USA Hockey. And the reason we have him on is recently USA Hockey unveiled a new penalty for what happens if in the course of a game, or I guess even before the game, if there were a racial slur or a racial taunt or a derogatory remark. And I think it's going to have a big impact. But I want to get Dave's take on it. I'll have him explain the rule change and what he thinks is going to happen with it. Dave?
Hi, Kevin. And hi, Tom. Good to be with you guys.
I
was talking to Tom a little bit before we came on live, and good to get those UP roots in there with Northern Michigan. My time at Michigan Tech and Joy, we had a little UP banter. But in regard to this presidential directive, Jim Smith, I think, Kevin, at the end of the day, just was tired of reports of racial and derogatory slurs. It's not a hockey issue. It's a societal issue, and we don't want it part of the game. Nobody wants it part of hockey. Nobody, frankly, wants it part of society, I don't believe. But I think he just felt that we needed a better deterrent to stop this and rid these kind of actions from our game. As hockey's come a long way over the course of the last 30, 40, 50 years. It's in all 50 states today. We wanted to see it continue to grow. We want it to be a welcoming place for families as we try and make sure hockey is the best youth sports option in communities all across the country. So, moving forward now, any type of violation, which is Rule 601E3, that involves derogatory language, hateful slurs, any type of that will now be a match penalty. And what that means is there'll be a 5-minute penalty on the clock. The person called for the penalty will be disqualified from that game. And then that person will be subject to a hearing, either by the affiliate or the junior league. And after they investigate it, and the affiliates have up to 30 days, they could issue further discipline, depending upon what they find. So kids need a way back. Kids make mistakes. We all make mistakes. This is what I know Jim Smith, our executive committee, our board of directors feels is something we really need to take a further stance on, lead. USA Hockey's been a leader for a long time in many ways. This is just another action, another leading thing that USA Hockey has done. And we hope it will make, and we're confident in making our sport better.
And Dave, the teeth of this for me is that there's 30 days allowed for the investigation of the incident, and I think particularly at the older age levels, I mean that is a major deterrent. I think when everybody sees that length of time that's allowed for the investigation, it sort of brings home, I'm going to be sitting for a while. And I think that's what really people have sort of concentrated on, that you're allowing for a full investigation of this, not just a hearing by phone in 2 minutes and it's done.
No, that's right, Kevin. And deterrence. I mean, there are various forms of penalties to deter behavior. I can think back to my days at Michigan Tech and the college environment. I think it had to be in the early 90s, mid 90s, where college hockey really wanted to make an effort to eliminate fighting from the college game, and they changed the penalty from, if you're called for fighting, you miss that game +1, you do it again, that game +2, etc. And we rapidly saw fighting essentially disappear from the collegiate game. So, and I think that's, again, Jim Smith, our president, our executive committee, our board, that's the mindset here. Let's take this penalty up a notch, and hopefully that helps get the message through to young kids, because they don't want to sit, just like you said. They want to play. They want to enjoy the great benefits that hockey brings. And we'll go from there. And again, people have to understand, too, kids need a way back. Kids make mistakes. We recognize that, too. We also want them to understand the severity of this and that hurtful and how much that hurts kids, that use of language, that hateful language. We really need to get that out of the game, and this is a good positive step forward.
Dave, I love it. I think way back when I played, the game has changed so much, it's evolved so much. And intimidation used to be such a big part of the game, the physical intimidation, but there's also the verbal intimidation. And I think back about those things. And listen, I'm not proud of necessarily some of the things I probably said and did out there too, thinking that was the right thing for me and for my team. And looking back at it, frankly, it wasn't the right thing. I don't think it even helped my team really that much. I think it was just part of the what you grew up with, that was the environment. So I love this. I love the change. Like you talk about getting rid of the fighting. It's a much more respectful game. And you deal with kids now and their parents, not just the mothers, but the mothers, they don't want their kids involved in the game the way it was. Yeah. They want their kids in a safe learning environment. So great job.
Well, Tom, I think learning, that's another big part of this education. Certainly the penalty is a great deterrent, but we need to continue to help kids, educate kids. Certainly it starts at home with parents and guardians. Coaches have an obligation to help kids understand some of the things that come out of their mouth and the hurt that it can cause. Kids don't always understand. They spew something out. They might not understand the hurt that it causes, and it's on us as adults to try and help them understand that as we move forward together.
Yeah, Dave, to me, the sincerity of the attempt to make a positive change here comes about from the knowledge that, you guys aren't reacting to anything in particular. It's just as Jim Smith said, trying to, even one incident would be too many in his book. And, he just thought, we're going to do this so we don't have even more. Like, certainly there's, as he said, occasionally you hear reports of it, but there's not been one like major incident that prompted this. And usually in the hockey world, that's what we do. We react to something big that's happened. But in this case, it's USA Hockey, trying to be proactive and trying to prevent this.
Yeah, that's right, Kevin. There was no tipping point, if you will, or no one thing that propelled this. It was, and that's one, I guess, over the 15 years I've been part of USA Hockey as a parent myself, I'm proud to be part of the organization because never one to rest on the laurels of what's been done in the past as USA Hockey. Always trying to provide the best possible environment for families and kids moving forward, always striving for success at the top stage on the international level. So just moving the game forward, and certainly hockey is not perfect, but our sport has led the way in so many things. The American Development Model, which now is in its 10th season, and trying to reshape the education, and again, give kids the best development environment and a fun and learning environment as they come up through youth hockey. That's been now in its 10th year, and it's been fun to see other sports follow what hockey has done. And that's a credit to the great volunteers all across the country and the many, many stakeholders in the game. And this is just another example of leading the way, no question.
Well, Dave, I've seen it firsthand. I live here in Connecticut, and my oldest son is 29 now. So I guess when he was like 8 years old, so 21 or 22 years ago, he was playing hockey. I was coaching him in the Greenwich Blues area. And it was always, the hockey around here was always, fun and well organized and everything. But I've just noticed a difference in that 20 plus years where it's now, it's the development of the players. And I think you see that nationally too, but I can see it firsthand in this area where the coaching and the facilities and the training for the coaches to understand how to coach, but not just coach the hockey, but I've seen a real difference in how to make these young men and women better people too, using the game of hockey. And the USA Hockey has done a huge job in that. So I think it's fantastic what they've done.
Yeah, it's fun to see, guys, how far. I mean, we've all had the great fortune to be around for a while, and to see hockey blossom in our country, and now in all 50 states. I mean, it wasn't that long ago when we thought of hockey in the U.S., we thought of Minnesota, Massachusetts, and Michigan, the 3Ms. And to think where top end players are coming from, both on the men's and women's side now, the great work that USA Hockey has done on the disabled side of the game, and now with 6 different disciplines, we truly believe hockey is for everybody and everyone. We continue to take steps together. We got a long way to go, but boy, it's fun. It's fun to see the skill shine through too, and the great players we see at the NHL level that are Americans, certainly in the collegiate game, the junior leagues on the women's side, our top disabled players too. It's really spectacular. It makes you smile for sure.
Just so the viewers of our podcast truly understand the impact of this new rule, the USA Hockey governing body goes all the way up to the junior ranks and to the senior men's hockey even. But in terms of we're mostly an NHL podcast. The United States Hockey League is a feeder system, and a big feeder system, and an important one for college hockey and the NHL. And this impacts them as well. What has been their reaction, if you know, Dave?
Yeah, I have talked to folks from the USHL, and they're 100% behind it. They're 100% on board. They've done terrific things too, and along with the North American League, in bettering the game at the junior level. Not only are they supportive of this, but what they've done on their own to eliminate dangerous plays from the game. And it's been fun to see the reduction in the number of fights, hits from behind, just dangerous plays, hits to the head that have been part of the junior game. And the numbers are significantly reduced on all those. And it's just a better space for our players at that level to develop and let skill shine through.
Dave, you touched on it there earlier. Do you have the numbers available to you, how much the sport of hockey has grown, like the registration of kids in all those different states, but just in general throughout the United States?
Yeah, the number of people playing our game is today at an all-time high, and it continues to grow. I think we're in the 10th year. We have our National Try Hockey for Free Day coming up this Saturday. Gives kids, focused on kids 4 to 9 that have never had a chance to play the game, to come out and try it for free. If you're listening, you can go to tryhockeyforfree.com and find a place near you, and they'll have the equipment for you, qualified coaches, certified coaches to help your kids get a chance to experience the great thrill of the game. And through efforts like that and many stakeholders in the game, and the focus really, Tom, has been at the 8U level, the entry level, to try and grow the game and get kids in there. We had record numbers of 8U boys and girls again last year, and the overall audience is, in terms of coaches, players, and officials, is as big as it's ever been. And that's fun to see. It's not, we're not growing by 10 and 15% a year, but we're ticking up 2-3% a year. It's a much bigger audience, as I said before, with hockey being played in all 50 states today. So fun to see, and we're going to keep going at it, keep working at it.
Actually, on Saturday, Dave, I'll be up in Saratoga, New York, too, for one of those clinics. The Rangers have me going up there, so looking forward to that. So everybody come up and join
Awesome.
Dave, we're going to have to let you go, but before you do, I know you've got a big event coming up next month, the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame, and this year it's going to be held in the Washington, D.C. area. A real interesting class this year. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we're excited to bring the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame induction celebration to the nation's capital. The museum is in Evelyn, Minnesota. We can't move the museum around, so we take the induction celebration around the country. First time we've been in D.C., but a really interesting class, Kevin, as you mentioned, that really encapsulates our entire hockey universe. Gary Bettman, commissioner of the NHL, I'm sure your listeners are familiar with, and obviously his focus is on what goes on in the NHL and bettering the league, but certainly he's done a masterful job at that with the help of many others. But he also cares about the whole entire hockey community and getting people to work together from the grassroots all the way on up in the game overall. Neil Henderson, another someone maybe people aren't as familiar with, from the Washington, D.C. area. He's co-founded the Fort DuPont Cannons. It's an inner-city program in D.C. It's had an enormous impact on young people for 40-plus years. Neil's still going at it in his late 70s, still out there influencing kids. And he started that program, and that has helped lead the way in other cities, big cities in the U.S., starting similar programs. So we're excited to enshrine Neil. Brian Gianta, again, I'm sure your listeners are familiar with, captain of the Montreal Canadiens and the Buffalo Sabres, wildly successful NHL career, great player at Boston College, of course, captain of their 2018 Olympic team here on the men's side. Tim Thomas, really a neat story, too. Got really into the NHL later in his career. Had a great career at Vermont, went over to Finland, starred there, and then, of course, won the Cup with the Bruins, two-time Vezina trophy winner. He'll be in the class. And then Chrissy Wendell, one of the greatest women's players ever. I know Ben Smith, who coached our 3 Olympic teams, has been involved both in the men's and women's side of the game for a long time. Called Chrissy the best player he's ever coached. So he's coached a lot of great players, so it's a great tribute to her. She started on this international stage for the U.S., and of course, also at the University of Minnesota, had a great high school career, too. I think she's still the all-time leading state scorer in the Minnesota State High School Hockey League. So it's going to be a grand celebration. We're going to honor Dr. Jack Latherwick with the Lester Patrick Trophy, Alex Ovechkin with the Wayne Gretzky International Award as well that night. And if you're around and able to make it, USHockeyHallOfFame.com is where you can get tickets and more information. And I know NHL Network is going to film it and then televise it after the fact. So we're still waiting on the details on the exact date, but we'll share that.
That's great.
All right, Dave. Well, we appreciate you stopping by and filling us in on the rule change, and that's certainly a rule I think that everyone's kind of, it's hard to be against that kind of rule.
Yeah, I hope so.
Most every rule that's introduced, usually causes controversy. But when I heard that one, and I think around the National Hockey League and in the hockey world in general, I think people thought, wow, that's just a good rule, and it sends a message, and an important one. So thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks, Dave. Please say hello to Jack Blatherwick for me too. He was with Herb Brooks here with the Rangers many years ago. He's a great man.
Sure will, Tom. And thanks, Kevin. Appreciate all you guys do, and have a great day.
Thanks, Dave. That was Dave Fisher, who is the spokesman for USA Hockey. And Tom, first of all, I've forgotten that you touched bases with Jack Blatherwick. He was in with the Rangers when Herbie came in, right? See,
he was one of the first guys that he was very scientific about the skating. Back in the days, sometimes the hard skating was used kind of as punishment if you didn't play hard enough, or coaches would just randomly throw it in. But he had a real science to it. Like the days that we were supposed to skate is the days after a game or wherever it was. And we liked him a lot because it wasn't just Herb getting mad at us and skating us from end to end. It was like there was a strategy to when we skated. So we really appreciated Jack.
Well, I got to tell you, full disclosure, I'm actually on the Lester Patrick committee. And when his name came up, I was stunned that he had not won the award because he was so important to the U.S. hockey program in the early 80s. Yeah. And the way I would describe it for, our viewers of this podcast is that, today everybody is into conditioning. But back then it wasn't like that. Yep. And Jack was really ahead of his time. Yep. He did, as Tom said, he took a scientific approach. He was really into the timing of players and, being aware of, what their strengths were and so forth. He was a fascinating man to talk to because, just like, Rod Brindamore, who's the coach in Carolina, like he was ahead of his time in terms of physical conditioning. When he came into the league, he lived in the weight room and guys thought he was nuts. Yeah. And now everybody lives in the weight room. Yeah. And anybody who's not in there is considered nuts. So anyway, Blatherwick is a really fascinating character, and he should have been honored a long time ago. I just think he's one of those guys because he wasn't a mainstream name that he kind of fell between the cracks, but he has been very important to U.S. hockey history. Well, Tom, just on the heels of that discussion of that, that rule change, and I got to say that 30-day investigation period for those older players, like if you're a star player and you get caught in that for doing something that you obviously shouldn't, that's the impact. It's like saying, you're going to be suspended for a lengthy period because they're not going to just sweep it under the rug. They're going to take their time and figure out, why it is you were saying what you did. But I wanted to ask you, because I've often wondered about this. Trash talking goes on in all sports. It goes on in hockey. We're not immune from that. What were the line that you didn't cross when you played? And do you think it's changed just from your knowledge of today's game? Like, what couldn't you talk about?
Well, families were off limits. I mean, you start talking about somebody's family, their kids especially, then that was off limits. And very often, if you went that far, even your own teammates were looking at you like, you just don't do that. Like most of the trash talking, frankly, was kind of some was kind of funny. I remember Kenny Baumgartner was on our team in Los Angeles, really tough guy, and Garth Butcher was on the Vancouver Canucks, and we're in LA playing a game, and they were going at it somehow. There's some, they were having a disagreement, we'll call it. And Baumgartner had just gotten pneumonia, got over pneumonia and missed a bunch of games. And Garth Butcher said to him, like, who's stupid enough to get pneumonia living in Los Angeles? And those were the kinds of things, like most of the time it was like little digs. There was sometimes like, I got in an argument it was John McClane one time. I'll never forget that. He was I didn't realize how quick-witted he was. And I said, I think we were in a confrontation. I said something to him like, he had the C on his jersey. And I said, who did you suck up to get the C on your jersey? And he turned to me, he says, who did you suck up to still be playing in the league? So, those are the kind of things. And there was one of those deals, like he said that, and I was like, oh God, you got me there. So I can't say too much about it. But that's the kind of stuff that you would go back and forth. It was more like just trying to demean the other guy. You really didn't really get too personal. But there's sometimes guys did, and it didn't go well at all. So the players kind of took care of that themselves.
They policed it themselves.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. Do you think it's worse today or just the same?
My feeling, from what I see, it is not worse today. I don't think that there's nearly as much trash talking at all. I think when I see the game, if anything, the old school guy in me wishes there was more guys standing up for each other. Like I saw Milan Lucic got suspended 2 games with the Calgary Flames there for a late hit and a punch to the head. Now, he went overboard with how he did it, and who he did it to was a young player who went in, tried to poke the puck from the goaltender, and Lucic came in. But that's the kind of stuff that we would, we do. We never let somebody touch your goaltender. Now, is that kind of the old school thinking? Yes, it is. But at least if there was something that happened, you would say something to him like, okay, that's it. I'm going to get you next time. Or, I mean, we played in a playoff series when I was with the Kings against the Edmonton Oilers, and Timmy Waters and I were defense partners, and we played against Norm Lacombe and Craig Simpson all the time. They were always out against us, and their job was to dump the puck in and try to run Timmy and I through the boards. And I finally told Craig Simpson, and him and I know each other now. We've seen each other since. He's a great guy. He does a fantastic job on TV. He was just doing his job. His job was to hit me all the time. And I told him, I said, you keep doing that, and I'm going to make you pay for it. And there's a great video of it. I finally had enough. And the puck got dumped in. I pretended the puck was in my skates, and then I lifted my elbow up as he's coming in to hit me, and my elbow hit him pretty good in the jaw, and he went down. Then we had our verbal confrontation after. I said, listen, I told you, you keep doing that, and that's what's going to happen to you. You do it again, and it's going to happen again. So that's the kind of stuff that verbal, like threatening, that I'm going to get you kind of mentality is more the stuff that happened then. I just don't see that much now. It just does that whole intimidation part of the game, and maybe in a lot of good ways, just is not part of the game anymore.
Yeah. It's amazing because we always complain. I shouldn't say we, but there is some complaints about the length of hockey games now. And when you consider how long they used to last with regard to when the fighting and the brawling and all that kind of stuff, it's funny. Nobody thought they were lasting long when all that was going on. Anyway, let's move on here. I wanted to ask you a little bit, the global series we have with coming up here with Tampa Bay and Buffalo. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on, do you like this in the regular season, going over and playing a couple of games in other countries and exposing it to Europe? Or what's your thought on that?
Nah, to me, I think it's fine. It's not a whole lot different than a team traveling from coast to coast, traveling over there to play. The travel conditions now are much better. The players know much more about their diet and hydration and sleep patterns and all those things. So I don't think those kind of worries about tiring the players out are there. I think the more we can grow our game, the better. I think the league has done a fantastic job of that. We've talked about that stuff before, with the outdoor games and everything they've done. So if it appears the league, like they usually do now, they have a plan. There's a reason why they're going over there to play, and if it's to expand the game, I think it's fantastic. And the more they can do that, the better. Yeah,
I like it too. And it's some really nice stories usually come out of there. I know when we had games in the Czech Republic, Voracek, told the story of his parents have to watch him because they watch all of his games. And if you had a kid in the NHL, you'd watch all their games. Well, they start at 1:15 in the morning over there. So, they're up always all night watching the games when they're over there. So it's the first time they were able to watch their son in the NHL in prime time in the Czech Republic. They were actually able to go to the game. So it was kind of a good story. But I think it's a very good thing as well. And, when I hear, and there hasn't been a whole lot of complaining, but occasionally you hear a player complaining about, well, it's so disruptive and everything. Well, come on. Like you said, it's 6 hours over to Europe.
You know what, Kevin, you raised a good point. It's like one of my pet peeves now is everybody complains about these back-to-back games now, about how they're going to be tired on the second night of back-to-back games. That never was part of we didn't even think about that. We didn't talk about that when we played in the past. Like, I think that is almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Everybody says, well, you're going to be tired, so you feel tired the next day. Right. I just think that's part of playing in the National Hockey League. It's part of your preparation. It's part of your training during the summer. It's part of taking care of your body. So when I hear that from people, I agree with you. When people are complaining about going over to Europe, that's, I was a player. Hockey players are going to complain about something just to complain about it. So,
I'm always bothered by the back-to-back or the 3 and 4. Can you imagine saying to a surgeon, if he came in and said, well, I can't do surgeries 2 days in a row, I can't, there are rules that govern, how long a pilot can play, right. But, he can certainly fly 2 consecutive days.
Right.
So
imagine some Marine is over in Afghanistan or Iraq, and he's marching with the 80-pound pack on and 100.
Oh yeah.
Heat. You say, well, I can't do it. This is the second day in a row. I can't do it. I'm too tired. Right?
No, and he's doing that for 8, 10. He's humping for 8, 10, 12 hours, not playing 13 minutes.
Totally,
or whatever it is. So yeah, I agree with you on that, and I think that just comes from everybody's job comes with his own personal form of hell, and we just kind of get caught up in our own little world. I don't think it's the end of the world either way, but I think sometimes players should think about that before they're playing.
Yeah, totally.
About it. Speaking of the Lightning, though, I did want to bring up, here we are. We're in November now, and by now the Lightning should look like the Lightning, but they don't.
Yeah.
And I've said this before, but sooner or later, a poor start becomes who you are.
Yep.
I don't think this is who the Lightning are. But I mean, what's going on there? Why is this adjustment period? Were they that overwhelmed by what happened to them against the Columbus Blue Jackets?
Like I've heard a few GMs say, I think it was Kenny Holland first said this to me years ago, the difference between winning and losing in the National Hockey League is very slim. Like even the bottom teams, like Ottawa comes in and beats the New York Rangers one night and then goes to lose the Islanders the next night. So, I mean, it's the same hockey team. They lost. I just think when you look at Tampa, they're like a lot of teams. I think I put San Jose in the same category where it's almost like they've got too much talent. They're showing up at the rink thinking, we can just step on the ice. We out-talent the other team. Where the teams that have learned to win, the Washington Capitals learned it, the Pittsburgh Penguins learned it, the Boston Bruins play with that same attitude. They know that to win, it doesn't matter about their talent. It means like coming up and doing their job, everybody doing their job every night. You're not always going to be perfect from shift to shift, from period to period, from game to game, but you've got to show up and do the work. It really is that simple. You need this attention to detail. Dump the puck in at the blue line as you're attacking the offensive zone so you don't turn it over. No turnovers at your blue line coming out of your zone. All the little things that go into winning. And I think those talented teams just think that they can get away with things because they are so talented, and partly because they have in the past. They like last year's a perfect example. They had great goaltending. They probably got away with things they shouldn't have, and now they think they can just show up and play, and they haven't seemed to learn that lesson yet, that's not the way it works.
And I think there's always a tendency in our sport to overreact to things.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the Lightning did overreact to what happened against the Columbus Blue Jackets. There's a lot of discussion, and some of it was warranted, about how they needed to sort of change their style a little bit. I mean, we talked about it. The Washington Capitals had to do it 2 years ago when they won. Yep. Ovi had to be a little different player. We say the Maple Leafs, even Ovi said it, and Mike Babcock agreed that the Maple Leafs have to be a different team if they want to be successful. And the Lightning probably need to adjust their game. You can't play pure offensive regular season style hockey and expect to win the championship. But saying all that, the fact that we've already had John Cooper sort of discuss, the mental impact that had on him, I think that's too much. It's weird stuff. Good teams lose in the playoffs. Every year, good teams lose in the playoffs. So, and it doesn't go the way you think it was. I think you tend to have to sort of, accept the fact that's just the way it goes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. You are going to lose hockey games. And I can't remember who it was. I think it was John Muckler I saw years ago quoted saying that if you can get the most out of your players and team 75% of the time during the regular season, you're doing pretty well. So you're going to have those ups and downs. I mean, look at the Islanders now; they're on 10 in a row. Boston, Colorado was, they were fantastic the first 10 games. Now they've lost a few games. So you're not always going to be at your best. But I agree with you totally. Don't overreact to those things. Don't overreact to when you're like the Islanders. Don't overreact to you winning 10 games in a row and thinking now you're going to win the Stanley Cup. Nor do you overreact to the periods of time where you're not playing as well. It's ups and downs, ebbs and flows. And the bottom line to me is management and coaches has to look at their team and say, listen, do we have the pieces of the puzzle to win this year? And then write out the ups and downs. And okay, if we really believe we have the pieces of the puzzle, then let's just write it out, get the most out of the team, get ready for the playoffs.
We're running out of time, but I wanted to talk a little bit about, the Dallas Stars. We've talked about their poor start, and they've turned it around a little bit. They look a little bit more like we thought they were going to look. I think they're 7-3 in their last 10. And then, of course, John Klingberg gets injured last night, which, it seems like the hockey gods do that. If you figure out what's going on, you got to get one more piece of adversity to get through. But I wonder on this one, and hear me out on this. Klingberg wasn't playing very well. You look at his point totals; they're down. His plus minus is way below everybody else's on his team, and he's been a good player for him. And they have Miro Heiskanen there as well. And I wonder if this little injury, he'll be out 2 weeks. This might be a time to sort of him to regroup mentally, and Heiskanen can take on a much more expanded role. And in the long run, this may not be the end of the world for them. That they
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I hate agreeing with you all the time, too. You know that, but I have to agree.
You do.
No, I agree with you totally. I think for him to regroup, and I think, I remember back when I was with the Rangers and Barry Beck was our captain. And when Barry would get hurt, I would get, me and all the other defensemen would get extra ice time. We'd get extra power play time, extra penalty killing time, extra roles, late in the game, all those important roles. Because Barry was a dominant player and he deserved to be out there in all those situations. He was that good of a player. And it made me feel like I was a better player. And in a lot of ways, everybody stepped up their game more because they knew they had to replace Barry Beck and what he brought to the table. So if anything, I think it's going to be a good thing for the team that they now have to work harder. It's like we talked about. It's like those talented teams aren't working hard enough, aren't playing well enough as a team. Maybe this will be what the Dallas Stars need, or part of what they need to step up their game. So I agree with you.
Yeah, well, they've turned it around. They were back to 500, and considering how poorly they were playing, I think that's kind of shows that they are suddenly playing better. It's interesting on that team, and he's a goalie, so he's never going to be where the sea. But Ben Bishop has become a leader on that team. When you watch after the game, he's a guy that's always talking and seems to say kind of the right thing. So, I'm actually kind of happy to see that. I think that'll make that division a little bit better.
Let's make one thing really clear, too. I need to ask you a question, just to be sure. You are already in the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame, correct?
I am not.
You're not in the USA Hockey Hall of Fame?
No, I'm not. I've got the Lester Patrick, but
wow.
I have not been.
Okay. That's the one that's left, right? Every other Hall of Fame you're in. Is that?
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, you've been listening to the Laidlaw and Allen Report. I'm Allen. He's Laidlaw. We'll be back next week to talk about all things hockey.
See you Monday, guys.